Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Beth Korchinski. I'm a member of the Tergar staff. I'm zooming in from Ann Arbor, Michigan today. And on behalf of my colleagues all around the world and behind the scenes here, I'd like to welcome you to my meditation journey with composer, musician, and artist Laurie Anderson, in conversation with Tergar Executive Director Cortland Dahl. We're expecting about 7,000 people to join us today via Zoom and YouTube. Today's program is being offered in 6 languages. Whether you're joining from Zoom or YouTube, please use the chat feature to say hello and let us know where you're from. If you have any technical issues during the event, difficulty hearing, for example, you can use the Q&A box in Zoom or the chat in YouTube to let us know. And now, for those of you who have joined via Zoom, we'd like to know what language you're listening in today. So we're going to put a poll up on the screen, and please take a moment to respond. Which language you are listening in. Of course, on YouTube, this doesn't apply to you, so thanks for your patience. So let's see, it looks like we have people are still responding, but there we go. It looks like we have a pretty good mix of people listening in all the languages that are available today. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, I'd like to welcome Tergar Executive Director Cortland Dahl to get our program started. Hi, Cortland.
Hey, Beth, and hello to all of you around the world, many different time zones. So thank you so much for joining us. It is a delight, a privilege and honor to be here with our guest, Laurie Anderson. And I'll just say a few words to introduce her and her remarkable career, and then we'll dive in and get started with the conversation. So Laurie, if you want to join us here, I'll just say a few words to get us started. So I must say, I've introduced quite a few people. Laurie is probably one of the more difficult ones to sum up. But I think if you had to sum up all the amazing things that Laurie has done in her career, she's really one of the most iconic and pioneering artists of our times. So she has released 7 albums, including a Grammy-winning collaboration with the Kronos Quartet. She's published 6 books. Her art and installations and works have been featured at some of the most renowned institutions on the planet, including museums like the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, where she lives. I think you could even say that she's an inventor and that she's pioneered the use of technology in art, music, and performance. And perhaps most germane to our conversation today, she is also a longtime meditator. She's a close student of Mingyur Rinpoche, who is the guiding teacher of the Tergar community, which is hosting this event. And she's a longtime Buddhist practitioner, which is a path that she shared with her husband, Lou Reed, who of course is also a renowned artist and musician. So Laurie, it's just a delight to have you with us. We're very much looking forward to this conversation. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Cortland. Hello. Hello, everybody.
So this is probably, I'm sure you've been interviewed countless times about your art and your creativity. And this is probably not so common to be talking about your spiritual journey and your meditation practice. But I thought we could go back to the very beginning. We'd love to hear anything you want to share about how this all started from you. You know, what was going on in your life, you know, what drew you to Buddhism and meditation, and just how did that all begin for you?
I think what drew me to it was a comment of a friend. And he said, you know, I've been feeling so scattered and I went to this, kind of messed up, and I went to this place in Massachusetts, and and for a 10-day silent meditation. And when I came back, my mind was like a beam. The chatter was gone, and I could move my mind here, then move my mind there. And I thought, whoa, I want a mind like a beam. So I went to this place, IMS, Insight Meditation, in Barre, Massachusetts. And this was 1977. And there were a lot of people coming from India then, Americans who were like, their eyes were like, whoa, I just saw something there. They were kind of gathering. There was a lot of interest in America at the time in meditation, and Ram Dass was around. A lot of things were going on also in the art world where I was from. So I decided to go there. And just a quick story of like the first, when I got there, they said, well, why are you here? And I said, well, I want to have a mind like a beam. And they said, no, well, Vipassana is about pain. And I said, well, no, I said, no, I'm here for the beam. And they were saying, no, it's the pain, there's the beam, the pain, the beam. So I was like, this is a bad way to start. So I eventually learned that it's very much about pain and what we do with it, so that when something happens to you and you don't go, you put that somewhere. And there are many ways of finding it. Psychoanalysis, you do it through language. You go back and kind of go through the stories of when that happened, and you pull it apart. And my art is about stories, so I didn't trust myself to do that. So I sat there and this was a very hardcore time in IMS. So you'd really do, many, many, many hours a day of sitting, and I wasn't used to that. And I realized that it was about the body, and the body storing pain. And anyway, at the end of that, I realized, that you keep it, and it's almost kind of filed, if your rage sits in your jaw, like loss is in your heart, kind of jealousy in your liver in a way, and you're just this library of pain, and you go through it then through using your body to find it. So long answer to that, but that was my first experience, and it was really opened my mind.
So did you ever get to the laser beam of mental concentration, or did your view of meditation just kind of change at that time, and you just viewed it differently?
Well, my view changed. I was a sculptor, and when I came out of that, my eyes were different, and I realized, whoa, I suddenly have a lot of peripheral vision that I didn't understand, that I could almost see way back here, because in a way I wasn't using this vision of like, it's sort of predator prey version of, when you're looking for something with desire, you hone in on it over there, then you hone in on it over there. And this was a whole different, exciting way for me to experience space as a sculptor, that it was also behind you. So that was and there were many things that changed about how I felt about space in the world.
And how to go back to this theme of pain, it's kind of funny because it sounds like the least effective way to get somebody to start meditating is to tell them that it's all about pain. But we all have pain, right? We all carry around our stuff. I'm curious, with whatever you were bringing into your, carrying around with you in your life at that time, we all have our things we're working on. How did the practices you were doing then and since help you deal with all of that? Was it did it shift the way you were dealing with your own challenges and the pain that was locked in your body, as you said?
Well, as I think back to that, I'm not an artist who is about, expressing myself, my pain, whatever, my ideas, whatever, and saying who I am. I don't really care if you know me, it's like, I care about looking at things and trying to put them in other shapes. So it was a really interesting way to look at ideas of identity and self. And I was also really just going for the joy, and most of the teachers that I've had who emphasize the excitement of being able to understand things a little bit better, that's more of my motivation than getting rid of pain. I've found that when I've been in pain, and many, many times in my life, like everyone, it's the best time to learn things when everything breaks, the best time. And when you think back sometimes to days of, like, let's say, being with a partner or a person, and you realize, the worst days were kind of the best days. They taught you so many things. They kind of broke your heart. So that's a very wonderful time to learn. And not that I look forward to having my heart broken, but I kind of do, I guess.
And you kind of mentioned some of your influences, some of the things that were inspiring you at the time. It wasn't necessarily this thing about pain and suffering, but more about joy and connecting with a new perspective. What I'm curious, since from that time and maybe over the preceding decades, because you've been at this a long time, what stands out to you as the either the teachers or the books or the influences in your own meditative journey that really opened your mind or inspired you or just, shifted your mind and experience in some profound way?
Oh gosh, there's so many teachers that it is almost impossible. I'm just going to say a few of them, but at that time, thinking way back, I was from the art world, and our worldview was more or less minimalism, heavily influenced by John Cage, and who was influenced heavily by Zen Buddhism. So there's a story that's very interesting that's never really been told, although the writer Kay Larson writes beautiful things about Buddhism and minimal art, which was my sort of background. I think one of her beautiful books is Where the Heart Beats, is about Cage and Buddhism. And anyway, the teachers I'm always looking for teachers. And I've found many, and I just mentioned a few because a lot of them I never met, but so they don't know they're my teacher, but they are. Of course, Pema Chodron is a wonderful teacher, and her books are like emergency handbooks, and the title. So when things are really bad, you can her titles are little haikus, like When Things Fall Apart, Start Where You Are, The Places That Scare You, The Wisdom of No Escape, How We Live Is How We Die. They're like little. You're like, oh, that's what I want to learn. For deeper sort of or different sort of training. For training, Joseph Goldstein is such an incredible teacher and a very practical sort of guidebooks, how to wake yourself up and be awake. Of course, Mingyur Rinpoche is I'm incredibly grateful to this person who we got to meet. Lou and I got to meet him, and I think of him absolutely every day, particularly in one of his most practical and beautiful teachings, which is this practice of try to practice how to feel sad without being sad. And I so much appreciate this distinction that there's such a difference between feeling it and becoming it. So there are many sad things in the world. And if you try to say, I'm into joy, and you push those away, you're an idiot. You're going to really suffer even more. So his idea is like you just see them and feel them, but do not become them. That's the teaching. So also, what wonderful sense of humor. He also made some beautiful portraits of Lou and me, and we we taught him how to swim. So Lou said, let's go swimming. And he said, oh, I don't, I sink. And he said, no, let's try it. So it was a wonderful friendship. And the portraits he made of Lou, who was a singer, as well as lots of other things, were their word portraits. So it's Oma Hung. So what a wonderful thing for a singer who wants to sing from his heart. You have it beginning here, Om, and then it comes through the throat as the ah, and Hung Hua explodes through the heart. So beautiful portrait. Mine was a little more stark, but I really appreciate it. My portrait is Deathless Unborn. And I'll be always thinking about what that means. When Lou died in 2013, which was I have to say, one of the great experiences of my life, watching him do that and being with him in his final moments, as his training really was there, and he was fully there. A whole nother story, but at that time, the teachings of Bob Thurman were really important to me. Liberation in the between, about teachings of the Bardo. And so that helps me and understand that. In another wonderful teacher who I've been focused on the last couple of years, Bikyu Analio. But see, I don't even know how to pronounce his name exactly. Anyway, he's writing the most beautiful things about mindfulness and breathing, and how to, and his spoken guided meditations are so beautiful about how to find a place to meditate. And even if you can't find that forest that he's in, you'll find your own forest. And his voice is so wonderful. He's talking to you about letting things go and letting them go, and kind of outlining them vaguely, and then talking about what you should do with your mind and how not to follow that thought. But he says, oh, no need for that now. And that one phrase, that just like takes my breath away. It's really fills you with relief. No need for that now. It's like this book, I think, When Breath Becomes Air is a beautiful book by Paul Kalanithi, and it's about the dying process and what breath is. I just mentioned a couple more people before we go on, because as I said,
yeah, this is great. Please
I'm
keep
really grateful to teachers. And not just to say that they have to be official teachers. It could be, suddenly a dog trots by and does something, you're going, be my teacher, you're my teacher, a tree, everything is doing that. But some of these beings are very focused and very, very sharp. I'm thinking also of a Kinchino, Mark Weber, who is a wonderful teacher who I've gotten a chance to be with in his teachings. He uses imagery that's so interesting and wonderful. And I think, having spent time in the Thai forest, but also coming from Switzerland, he has this kind of wonderful mix of, I'm going to get out of the sunbeam. There we go. Imagery that helps me a lot. So that, for example, things that come to mind that help me, like, where that train is going. When you're on a thought train or a loop, because you're on you know where it's going. Don't get on it. You don't have to get on it. Or of course, a lot of the imagery about meditation is big sky and clouds are thoughts, and don't follow the thoughts. And because he's Swiss, he uses this image of a lake. He goes, imagine your mind is a lake. And the thoughts are little sailboats. And I was like, okay, I can see that, because I love water. And so that these little sailboat dots are coming in, and you just let that go. And here comes another sailboat, let that go. He's such a wonderful teacher. You could see the lake, you can see the boats. You're like, whoa. And then he goes, beyond that, what is the wind that's blowing those boats? Where do your, not just your thoughts come from, but where's your energy coming from? So it's a wonderful way to investigate that. It's also very into working with Vedanas, and also the body, really coming always back to how does your body feel, and also questions, so those I file away for later, if things like, if something happens, just a question of, can you be non-reactive to that? It's super helpful to me, just to have a few little things, because life goes by so fast. I find that I need little prompts or maxims, and they help me a lot. And even sometimes when I don't understand something, I file it under mystery, because there's some things you need to hold without knowing where they belong. So keep those two. Sometimes the teachers kind of go into that and you're like, I don't know what that means, but it seems to mean something. So I'll try to go into that later, but I gather lists, and I gather these little short maxims, because as I said, when things are going, you don't have time to suddenly go deep. You have to kind of go. So these little catchphrases are really useful to me. Things like, well, I think one of the things Akinchino was saying was, you can't be happy tomorrow. That's a very useful one for me. Don't believe everything in your head is one I go to. Love is the only rational act. That's kind of billboard in my mind. The bad things are a support for meditation. So when something that you're like, oh, this is bad, you just go, no, this is going to be useful. Lou and I made up a lot of little rules and lists of things of how to live, for the same reason of like, life goes by too fast. And we came up finally with 3, and they are, number 1, don't be afraid of anyone. And, we can imagine how your life would change if you were not afraid of anyone.
Yeah, that's huge.
2, get a really good bullshit detector. and part 2 of that is learn how to use it. So, like, what? Really? Okay. And 3 is be really tender. And with those 3, I felt ready to kind of go out without the fear of that I would always have something in my pocket. Well, also books and teachers, some of the books are a big mixture of poetry, like, of course, the greats, T.S. Eliot, Rumi, Rilke. All those people have incredibly useful things to say about the mind and time and compassion and the future. One of the wonderful new books that's out is The Half-Known Life in Search of Paradise by Pico Iyer, which is a fantastic as well.
I'm curious that, you've mentioned a lot about the meditation, the part of meditation where you're really just bringing awareness fully into the body, into the moment, kind of being more in the here and now. But as you know, there's many different kinds of meditation, and a lot of them are, for people who are introduced to mindfulness, they don't realize that meditation is just like this ocean of, so many different kinds of meditation. They do different things. I'm wondering if any of those other forms of practice, the practices where you're using your imagination, or you mentioned the idea of asking questions, like there's a whole practice called analytical meditation, where it's basically the art of asking really provocative questions to yourself, and then just looking at your own experience and seeing what the question prompts you to see. So I'm curious if other forms of meditation over the course of your life, and especially these days, like what's really juicy and alive for you, in terms of all that vast array of practices that are out there.
It is vast, and for me, in a way, I mean, my work has become a way of doing many aspects of meditation, and particularly because my work is about stories and reality, really. So it's the nature of a lot of the things that we study as meditators. So I've done the last few years, I've been very focused on virtual reality and AI. So these are disciplines that align themselves for me almost perfectly with what I'm interested in doing as a meditator. I don't really make a distinction, to tell you the truth. I don't. For me, it's exactly the same thing. Awareness. Just as an artist, be aware. As a meditator, be aware. It's not brain surgery. It is really very simple. Now, with VR, of course, that is about creating another reality in which your body is a kind of hologram. So I've done several VR pieces, and one in which you are suddenly walking on the moon, and another one where you're in a world of language, written language and sound. And you, of course, in VR, you have a virtual body, as you almost do in meditation as well. So it's a lot of fun to play with that idea of the body, because it's a very different kind of imagery too. Like in film, when you see a film, like especially if it's a really good film, at the end of the film, you're like hypnotized. You're like, oh, where's my coat? Where's my bag? What's my name? You've been in the film, and that deeply. So getting up out of it is sometimes difficult. VR, you need your body. You are in another space. You need your body it's haptic also. So it's a haptic form. You touch things that aren't there, of course, because it's all virtual. You're in a space that is, again, behind you as much as in front of you. It's a wonderful way to jump into another's body, which of course is a practice that is very useful in terms of compassion. So in one of the things that we didn't put out because it was too scary, and this is with my collaborator, Shinshen Wang, who is in Taiwan, and we have made a lot of things together. Anyway, we decided this one was too scary. It was heart surgery. So you're suddenly, and it's a very real feeling thing. So you're here, and suddenly you're on a gurney, you're whizzing down a hallway, and you realize, what is this place? A hallway? It's a hospital. Then you're rolled into this place with a lot of bright lights, and a surgeon leans over and goes, okay, you're going to be getting quite sleepy. And then you are conscious, and then this knife comes down and cuts your heart, and the surgeon pulls your heart out and goes, look at, so
and you're viewing this as though it's your own body. This is happening to your own body. Wow.
Yes.
That is terrifying.
So it's terrifying, but it's also a weird relief. Oh, that's what it's like to be looking down at me, So you can do a lot of things in virtual reality, but you can also get super carried away with it, because a lot of the things, I've been on a lot of juries in film festivals for VR, because now I'm sort of like a VR person by default somehow, and so I get roped into these things. But sometimes they're so, because it's tech art, it gets kind of too fancy sometimes, like really overproduced, and particularly some of these things that are like Broadway show, really, really, really elaborate. And so when you're looking at all those things, you're like, oh, what are you doing all the bells and whistles for? I mean, okay, you're making another world. Good for you. It was very convincing, wonderful. But what's the story? What's the point? Why are you doing this? And we often gravitated to the things that were really stories. Like in one of these things, there are many, many amazing entries into the film festival in VR, super, super cool things. But we gave the big award to a VR piece that didn't work so well technically. It was like just more or less three-dimensional film, but the story was focusing on interviewing the parents of the girls who, you remember in 2014, Boko Haram, there were some
Oh yeah. Was it
girls,
Nigeria? Was that, yeah.
yes, who were
They were all
they
kidnapped
were
and
kidnapped, yeah, and taken by an Islamic terrorist group, and became prisoners, and they had to, it was a terrible thing. So and they didn't know what happened to them. And so in this VR piece, they are interviewing their parents, because almost half of the parents had died of grief. And we're like, who dies of grief? Who cares as much as to die for that? And so, no, that is a radical idea. That's the one we gave the first prize to,
Wow.
because that is an idea that's like very powerful. Same thing with later, another VR work, which was about, also didn't work very well technically, but the story was really great. You're in a rowboat with a guy. It was a Danish piece called The End of the Night, and you get in the rowboat and go, oh, I'm going to be stuck in this with the VR glasses for 55 minutes. They're so, and I'm in a rowboat with this guy. There's no escape. But what happened? He goes, he's rowing through Copenhagen, and it's dark around you. So you're caught in his boat, and he goes, there's Copenhagen before the war. There was Copenhagen after the war, and then let's row up now. And suddenly the boat starts levitating up into the 6th floor, and then you row into an apartment, and there's David, and David's going, we have to go now, we have to go. And no, I think we have time. No, you don't have time. And then you hear gunshots. So David is killed, and you have to rescue Rachel and his child and take them to Sweden. So anyway, the drama, the heart drama of these things is and the stories are what I'm really interested in. It's I mean, cutting edge stuff doesn't I don't know do a lot for me. No, actually, I'm a geek. I love tech stuff. And most of the things that I'm writing now are being written by AI programs. So that's my main collaborator. So, and that, of course, raises the question of who is writing and what is language, what are stories, where do they come from? And AI, biggest unknown word, or the danger word, is the C word. What is the C word? In AI, in artificial intelligence? It's consciousness. What is consciousness? So I feel like my study of the mind is really very much about what I'm doing now, and what everybody is doing, really, because here you are, you're trying to buy tickets to something, and you have to prove you're not a robot, and you have to say how many traffic lights are in that grid and how many staircases, and then you realize, wait a second, a robot is judging whether I'm a human or not.
It's true. I never thought about that.
Yeah, that's how to think about it.
A robot is gonna affirm or deny whether I am human
that's
or
a
not.
human.
That is
That's
an
not
ironic.
a human. You've got to be joking. So we're now aligned with intelligence and technology in ways that are really amazing. And I should also say, I'm very grateful to Akinchno Mark Weber for also mentioning a thing about this that I think about a lot, and it's basically like the quote of a cryptologist who is just talking about technology and whether to how to relate to it. Anyway, it's a question that I think is on the minds of meditators and anyone who deals with stories and how and who we think we are telling them, who's telling what story. So it's a really
I'm curious on that point, just to drill a little bit deeper on that, this sense of story and identity, as you were talking about the work you're doing with VR and just my own experience with VR. One of the amazing things is that it just alters your sense of self in a kind of dramatic way. And I think for me, at least, and I'd be curious to hear how this has played out in your journey, meditation in a way is doing the same thing. When I started to meditate, I was very much, at the time, what got me going was just a lot of anxiety. And so I was really just wanting to work with difficult emotional experiences. And I don't think I realized that despite what I thought meditation would do, it completely changed my sense of identity. And I started to see that what seemed just kind of undeniable truth, like this is who I am, was very much more fluid and much more dynamic. And meditation was just a way to sort of loosen the solidity of the self almost. And VR kind of does that in a very different way. So I'm curious.
It does. Yeah.
If that how, because you started your art, your meditation, you did both at a very young age. And of course, now with VR, how does this sense of identity and the stories about ourselves kind of play into all this for you?
Well, I'll tell you what is something that happened to me very recently over the New Year's. I was doing a silent meditation, and I was doing a practice of, letting things go, and there's just letting them go. And it's like pretty soon the whole landscape is littered with things that have been let go, thoughts, discarded thoughts. It was like a huge kind of, whoa, landscape of stuff. And I came kind of up out of that for a little bit. And I had this very weird experience. I could not remember my name. And this went on for about 10 seconds, which is a very long time not to know your name. Because at first I was like, oh, it's funny, I can't remember my name. And then I was like, I really can't remember my name. I'm thinking, what is my name? And so when you're like introduced to people and you've blanked out on both of their names, you kind of cover it with like, you two should really meet. Why don't you introduce yourself? Quite obvious that you've forgotten their names, but it goes by pretty fast. 10 seconds is an infinite length of time to be kind of do I have a piece of paper with my name on it somewhere? And then in the middle of this landscape of like forgetting or a vast place, I saw this kind of crummy banner, and it was fluttering over there, and it had my name on it. I was like, oh, that's my name. And then I thought, how stupid. What does that have to do with that? Nothing. And then I was thinking, like, it's like you see many, many, many beautiful works of art that have made for all reasons and all types of things. And then somebody comes along like an art critic and goes, primitivism. And you're going, why are you calling it that? So, yeah, identity is a very slippery, tricky thing. And when you and the biggest relief of my life in many ways is to not be connected to that, and not having to. But I also, as an artist, I also had to then create an identity, especially when I started doing pop records. And I just thought that was a joke, they're like, get an image. And I was like, oh, it's just.
Yeah, was that weird for you, being kind of avant-garde artist and then suddenly you're like a pop music star? Like, how did that must have been a surreal experience.
Well, I approached it as an anthropologist. I think it probably messed me up somewhat, sure. But because people are suddenly going, wow, I'm like, what are you, crazy? And so I knew this was just going to go, because all things do, especially in that world. But it did teach me a lot about how we try to nail together or cobble together some sort of personality, and then we shove it out into the world to go and walk around representing us. Oh, I'm this. And I feel a lot of guilt for that too, because now younger artists are kind of going, yeah, I got a brand. It's a branding kind of thing. And we're all familiar with this as we create these identities, how flimsy they are, really. And you know, how much like bad theater they are too. And I'm grateful to some of my teachers who point that out. It was like, how come you're turning your life into this ridiculous soap opera? You know, who you're writing this and starring in it, so you can surely change it, you know, and why don't you go in and rewrite that script and make it more crazy and free, and don't cast yourself as the sad sack who is always losing, you know, whatever, however you're trying to, you know, make your life into some kind of, I don't know, drama. And realizing so that's kind of often like just bad acting, you know. It's like,
and maybe not even realizing it's bad acting. You suddenly, it's like you forget. It's like a bad movie, but you forgot that it's actually a movie.
Yeah, you forgot that you wrote it.
Yeah,
you know, and you wrote it, starring in it. You did the set design. You did the whole thing. So anyway, yeah. So those things do align for me. That thinking about what stories and words are, and how to tell them, and who you are.
How did this work for you in relationship? I mean, you've spoken, you know, really movingly about Lou's, you know, final days with him, literally, you know, spending those final moments, and what a profound experience that was. And this was obviously a journey you shared, not just your art, but your spiritual path, your meditation. I'm kind of curious how that came together. Did you, I mean, you had been, I'm guessing when you met him, you already had been your own meditation and spiritual journey. He probably had his. To what degree did that begin to flow together, or did you just have your own thing going on?
Sorry. Hold on, let me just turn something off here.
Sure, go ahead.
That is something I'm really just beginning to learn about. We just finished a book called The Art of the Straight Line, and it's a book that Lou wrote about Tai Chi. And like, what does a straight line, first of all, have to do with Tai Chi, which is all about circles, and you know, and he made a lot of music for Tai Chi as well. But we just discovered that really those pieces of music were originally made for meditation. And there was even in the 60s, Lou was really interested in that. Here was an artist, so Lou Reed, who did Transformer, White Light, White Heat. He was somebody who was very interested in the work of Alice Bailey in the 60s, who was a kind of transcendentalist person who had a lot of ideas about the mind and body and energy. And that's where Tai Chi and meditation came together for Lou, is through the body. And so he wrote a number of beautiful meditations that we're now going to be putting out as meditations, because also he added words to those, so that as you're going through your body, like learning about where things are, how it's working, he wrote some very simple words, and they just go through your body, and they are so this music is going on, and you hear the center of your body, the center of your heart, the center of your spirit, your mind, your essence. And then they're a little bit like instructions to empty your mind and listen to the center of your body, the center of creation. So the Dantian, which is this is a Chen style Tai Chi, so it's from the Chen village in China, and our teachers, Master Ren Guanyi, who is push hands champion of China, and is an energy system that has a lot to do with meditation. It is a moving meditation. So we studied that. Can you really ever actually go into the mind of someone else or meditate with someone else? Or you mean you can be in the same place, even if you're really close to someone, you're alone in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like we were happily side by side meditating, and it's an adventure that we do alone, of course, with the millions of teachers who help us find
Right.
those places. But and also being alone is I'm quite used to it, because it's what you do when you make art. You just kind of go, oh, what should I possibly do? I mean, why would and I also have to say that I'm inspired by people who feel that this can make the world a better place. But I'm always looking for teachings that finesse that idea, because when I think of how to make a better place, how to make the world a better place as an artist, I always think, better for who? For you and your friends? What are you talking about? Really, how do you know what's better? So I look to people like Sharon Salzberg, who looks at that question, like, how can we make things, how does this go out into the world? And is change possible? How do we as meditators look at that question? And she made some really great distinctions in her discussions with Bell Hooks, the artist and writer, about making the world a better place, and saying it's not called social action because that has a bit of a missionary feel, like, I know what you should do to make your life better. You go, you don't even know me. Why are you telling me what to do? So Bell Hooks is thinking of it as I think it was called radical action. I mean, and this idea of love being radical, that love is radical. Just back to the Boko Haram people, that is a deeply radical thing, especially in our anxiety-ridden world where the clock is ticking, and we are pretty clear that we're in the sixth extinction. That is not a debatable point. The hard thing is, how do you feel about that, and how do you tell that story? Because stories are things that you tell to other people. And if you're telling the story of, let's say, the end of the world, you're telling it to who? To no one, And that's a radical thing too, to tell a story to nobody. That
the last work of art. What is that?
Yeah, and not to get too dramatic about it, because the great thing is we don't know where we're going. We don't know what we are. We don't know. So another book I'd like to recommend is When We Cease to Understand the World, by a Chilean writer called Benjamin Labatut. And it's a very, very beautiful account of why we might not understand what's going on right now. And his ideas about, anyway, it kind of goes into the back of the minds of quantum physicists. Don't let that put you off. It's a really beautiful, starts with the color. Any book that starts with the color has got to be great. It starts with Prussian blue. And then he talks about the one guy, Haber, who invented two things. He invented Zyklon B, killed millions of Jews. He also invented a way to pull nitrogen out of the air to create fertilizer. So before this invention, we had to dig up all the horses who died in Waterloo, grind up their bones and make fertilizer. That's how you made fertilizer. Now you could make fertilizer from the air. So what did this do? This meant that in 100 years, we went from billion plus to almost 9 billion. Our world is shifting, changing. It's the source of enormous anxiety for people. I feel like people are cracking now. I feel like it's a very intense era and such an important time to think of ways to understand it better and yourself in that, but also bigger things that are how to just understand these gigantic shifts in energy.
I wonder if we just have a few minutes left, and we've got a bunch of great questions from those who are watching. Would you mind if we do a bit of a lightning round here? I can share some of the questions.
Yeah, I love to.
This has been fantastic, Laurie. So the first question here is about fearlessness. So this person wrote, "You've been described as fearless in your art. Can you talk about fear and its effect and the lessons from it for you?"
I am not fearless. I'm afraid of things. Of course, but I do have some ways around it sometimes. Mostly by relaxing into the question. So instead of going like, "Oh, that's so scary," I try to step back and go, "Well, what is this?" And recently, that was challenged very much by a friend and teacher, Amy Gross, who was telling me about a recent trip she made to Varanasi, and watching the corpses being burned, and they had, as she described it, using big sticks to chop off the charred head. And I was like, she said, "I had the feeling this was the final place." And then she said, "Well, I didn't have ever much stock in reincarnation and blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Oh, I do." And that struck a fear note for me because I feel a connection to people, to dead people, that I feel their spirit, I feel their ideas, I feel their energy. And I've been very dependent on that idea. So anything that pushes me away from that is like, ooh. And so she said, just consider that might be inside you. I was like, oh, that is a fearful idea, that it's out there. But then I've been living with that for maybe just the last week or so as an idea of like, and of course, as I poke at that, I'm kind of like, I go back to all of the other things that I know about that maybe we're just all tapped into this big thing, and the lines are a lot blurrier between us, all the entities, let's say, and that I can, let's say, live with. So living with your fears is a way to not maybe let them turn you into make you panic, but and Mingyur Rinpoche's teachings about panic are also wonderful as well, and very helpful in that panic and fear, to do it through the body, which is your resource, the center of to go to the center of your heart, the center of creation, which is your connection to all of this.
Thank you. That's beautiful. So maybe just one last question. I think we're unfortunately at the end of our time. I feel like we could go on forever here, but I wonder if you have any advice or words from your own experience around creativity and awareness, especially for those who are just beginning to explore that for themselves. It could be they're exploring meditation and awareness for the first time, or people who might not think of themselves as creative types. Just anything you would say for those of us who look at somebody like you as, such a great example of how to embody these things. Any words of advice on how to get started and just to get the confidence to step onto the path?
Oh, well, I'm, as an artist, I really, I kind of am anti-authority. So whenever I feel like I get to make it up, this is good news. So I think that I don't know what advice I could have, but I would say maybe think of the ability that you have to transform things, because and the agency that you have to take these, especially the negative things, which are the gifts of anger, for example, to how would you change that? How would you alchemically take the energy in that and turn it into something else? For example, courage, or let's say rage, because it's always interesting to me that rage sits right in the middle of courage, COURAGE, you know, so those things have many things in common. They help you. Also, I think when again, it's tricks. I use tricks to help me. Like if I'm feeling heartless or, you know, like I just don't have enough joy or empathy, you know, there are all these great tricks of you know, the wonderful story of picture this cute little puppy, and he's playing around in the sun, and all these little boys are around him, and they're playing with him, and then they start throwing a couple little stones his way, and then they pick up more stones, and then they pick up more stones, and then they're throwing stones at the puppy, and the puppy is, and they stone the puppy to death. And you are then asked to feel that from all those sides of the boys, the puppy, and what is compassion, so that you can use these teachings to get out of your ruts, you know, because we're all in ruts all the time. And so those little things help me to make the to use that stuff and turn it into something else. And so also I'm going to just quote a wonderful poet, Sharon Olds, who she said, you know, her poetry students have a lot of anxiety now. I was like, oh, really? Like, look around the world, everyone is grinding their teeth, like in a state of panic, right? For good reason. It's a difficult time. This is not the golden age, so to say the least. So she says, okay, number one, get a lot of sleep. Number two, eat really good food. And number three, try not to hate yourself so much. And as a poet, as a meditator, as a person, that's the first one. Try to find a place in yourself that you can support yourself well and be part of, and then don't cast yourself as the lonely outcast, but go walk out the door and see what happens out there.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us, Laurie. It's been, just priceless to hear all of these experiences and insights. And I, on behalf of everybody who's listening, just want to deeply, sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this.
Well, and thanks everybody who came. You know, that it's so wonderful to be part of a community of people who are working on the same things. So thank you for including me.
Yeah, thank you. See you at a retreat sometime soon.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, take care.
Bye.
So thank you everybody for joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed this dialogue. I know I certainly did. I could have sat here all day listening to Laurie. It was hard to look at the clock and see that the time was marching on. So maybe we could just share a few words, a few parting thoughts. And for those of you who are interested in learning a bit more about meditation, Laurie mentioned Mingyur Rinpoche, who's one of her and Lou Reed's main teachers. And of course, this is hosted by Tergar, which is the community of Mingyur Rinpoche. So there are some great opportunities to simply learn how to meditate. So there's a program called The Joy of Living, which is offered in the Tergar community. And it's really just a very simple step-by-step path to learn how to meditate. So you can, I think if we can click to the next slide, there's you can go to, I think it's joy@tergar.org to just get to begin that simple training. And the whole idea here, it's a lot of actually what Laurie was talking about, how we can connect with awareness, compassion, and wisdom, and how we can meditate anytime and anywhere. And again, as Laurie mentioned a few times, how we actually can use anything that happens in our lives, the highs, the lows, everything in between, as an opportunity to explore our minds and explore experience through meditation. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out here at joy.tergar.org. Also, just to say, we are a nonprofit. We have communities all over the world, and we do a lot of things like this event today that we do, that we freely offer. But everything that we do is really built on the generosity of people like you. So it was the donations and contributions of others that made it possible for us to be here today with Laurie and to hear these remarkable stories and insights. So if you are moved to help support this work and to support our vision for bringing more awareness, compassion, and wisdom into the world, we would love to have your support. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Really hope you found this as inspiring as we did, and look forward to connecting with you soon. And I'll turn it over to Beth for just a few words to say goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Cortland. That was absolutely lovely. I'm so happy to have been a part of it. We will be making the recording available through our social media, on Facebook, on YouTube. If you're watching right now on YouTube, go ahead and click subscribe to join our channel, and then you'll find out about other events like this. We'll be having a few more of these types of conversations, hopefully throughout the year. So please check our website for more information at tergar.org. And on behalf of my colleagues behind the scenes and all the interpreters who helped us understand today's program, I would like to thank you for your time and your attention, and we hope to see you at a future event. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.